Most sellers in Yonkers have no idea how many things can go wrong during the sale of their home. Not because the market is bad, not because their property isn't worth it, but because of what happens behind the scenes between the agents that the seller never sees. And sometimes what the seller never sees is exactly the problem. I'm going to tell you about a real estate transaction that happened right here in Yonkers. A $990,000 home sale. A seller who thought they understood the deal they had agreed to. And the listing agent, John Norton of Henry John Balai Real Estate, who failed to present the buyer's offer to the seller the way it was actually submitted. That single failure blindsided the seller, put the entire transaction at risk, and trigger a commission dispute that could have placed a lien on that property, preventing the sale from closing altogether. This is a true story. And if you are a seller, or if you are ever planning to sell your home, you need to understand exactly how this happened and what it means to you. When you list your home for sale and an offer comes in, you are entirely dependent on your listing agent to present that offer to you accurately and completely. You don't see an original offer document the buyer's agent signed in most cases. You don't see the email it came with. You don't see it on the conversation between the agents. You see what your agent shows you and tells you. That is the foundation of the relationship. That is why fiduciary duty exists. A listing agent has a legal and ethical obligation, a fiduciary responsibility to act in your best interest. And that begins with one fundamental requirement. Every offer must be presented to you exactly as it was submitted. Not a summary, not a filtered downward version, not the parts the agent thinks matter. The complete offer, every term, every line. Because as a seller, you cannot make an informed decision about an offer you haven't fully shown. In this transaction, I represented the buyer. I submitted a written offer by email to the listing agent, John Norton of Henry John Balai Real Estate. The offer was complete. Every term was included, the sale price, the conditions, and the buyer's agent compensation structure. 3% in writing attached to the email. And because clarity matters, I also reinforced in the body of my email that the offer should be reviewed in its entirety before being presented to the seller. There was nothing hidden, nothing verbal, nothing ambiguous. Everything was disclosed in writing from day one. The offer was accepted. After acceptance, I requested a copy of the memorandum of sale. Normal practice for review before contracts being prepared. When it arrived, I looked it over. The buyer's agent compensation? Gone. completely omitted. I contacted John Norton immediately and pointed out the error. He revised it and sent it back. But when the revised version came back, instead of 3% as written in the offer, it reflected only 2%. I called him again. I said, this is not how the offer was presented to you. The written offer included 3% buyer's agent compensation. It was in the offer document. It was reinforced in the email. Please correct it. His response? Well, the seller is only offering 2% per the listing agreement. And that phrase told me everything I needed to know. The seller had never been properly shown the compensation terms of my offer. Not once. Put yourself in the seller's position for the moment. You accept the offer. You believe you understand the deal. Your agent tells you the terms. You move forward in a good faith. And then, after contracts are being prepared, after the buyer has completed inspection, after everyone is moving towards closing, you find out that the compensation structure in the offer you accepted was not what you were originally shown. How would that feel? And that's exactly what happened to this seller. When it came time to sign the contracts, the seller stalled. The feedback from attorneys was clear. The seller felt blindsided. The seller was forced into renegotiating right now what the seller felt he was getting. The seller felt the money was being taken from them after the fact. The seller was frustrated and upset. And I get it. And that frustration, completely understandable. Because the seller had never been given the full picture from the beginning. At one point, I was informed that the seller was considering walking away from the deal entirely and entertaining other offers. Think about what that means. The buyer, who had done everything right, submitted a clean written offer, completed inspection, signed contract, wired the down payment, was now at risk of losing the home. Because the listing agent failed to present the offer correctly. When I discovered that the offer had not been presented accurately, I did what any professional would do. I escalated. I contacted not just John Norton, the listing agent, but the broker of the firm, Henry Jambalai of Henry Jambalai Real Estate. I explained exactly what had happened, and I walked him through the timeline. I referenced the written offer, the email, the omissions, the incorrect version, all of it. What I got back was not accountability. What I got back was deflection. The broker essentially communicated that they had not done anything wrong. No acknowledgement of the omission, no acknowledgement of the incorrect revision, no acknowledgement of the impact of the seller. Just resistance. And I want sellers watching this to understand something important. When you hire a listing agent, you are also hiring their brokerage. The broker is responsible for supervising their agents. The broker sets the culture and the standards of that office. When a broker responds to a documented failure is to avoid accountability rather than address it, that tells you something about the brokerage. Here is something most sellers are never told. When a buyer's agent submits a written offer that includes a compensation structure, and that offer is accepted, that is a documented agreement. If that compensation is later disputed because it was never properly disclosed to the seller, the buyer's agent has legal grounds to pursue that commission. And that pursuit can happen before your closing. A lien can be placed on your property. A lien on your property means that transaction cannot close until the dispute is resolved. Your deal is frozen. Your buyer is stuck. Your closing date is gone. And you, the seller, are caught in the middle of a legal dispute that was created by your own agent's failure. After closing, the consequences continue. A formal ethical complaint can be filed with the real estate board. Arbitration can follow. The agent's license and the brokerage's professional standing can come under review. All of this, every bit of it, traces back to one failure: presenting the offer completely and accurately from the beginning. So what does this mean to you as a seller? First, before you accept any offer, ask your agent to walk you through every single term in writing. Not a summary, the actual document. Ask specifically, what is the sale price? Are there any credits or concessions? What is the buyer's agent compensation structure? Are there any conditions or contingencies I need to be aware of? Second, if anything feels different from what you were told verbally, ask for clarification in writing before you sign. Third, understand that once you accept an offer and transaction moves forward, revising terms becomes complicated, contentious, and potentially costly. Protect yourself before you sign, not after. And fourth, know who your agent works for. A listings agent fiduciary duty is to you, the seller. Their obligation is to give you complete, accurate information so you can make informed decisions. If they are filtering, omitting, or summarizing offers rather than presenting them fully, they are not fulfilling that obligation. And that is not just an ethical failure. It is a failure that can cost you money, delay your closing, and expose your property to legal action. Now, I want to be clear about something. My goal throughout this entire situation was never to escalate unnecessarily. My goal was to resolve it professionally, the way disputes between agents should be resolved. So before the closing, I reached out to Henry Jambalaya directly by text. On April 27th, I sent Henry a message asking him to call me. Give me a call. I called him. In that conversation, I made my position clear. Then I told him I strongly suggest that you settle the deficiency at closing. I can reassure you, it will not be fun otherwise. This was not a threat. That was a professional giving a broker a clear, documented opportunity to do the right thing before this went further. He didn't act on it. A week passed. On May 17th, I followed up by a text confirming that his brokerage has received the formal commission invoice I submitted to his brokerage for the commission deficiency. No response. On May 19th, I followed up again. I wrote, I didn't hear back from you. Typically, lack of response is not a positive sign. Just do the right thing. Still no response. The closing took place on the 22nd. The commission deficiency was not settled at closing. So today, May 26th, 4 days after the closing, I called Henry Jambalaya one final time. Not to threaten, not to argue, simply to follow up on my answered texts, just to understand whether he intended to resolve this in good faith or whether I need to pursue another route. And here is what Henry Jambalaya, the broker of Henry Jambalaya Real Estate, said to me on a call. He told me that I had threatened him via the text. He told me he had forwarded the messages to his attorney. And then he hung up on me. Look at those messages again. I asked him to call me. I warned him professionally that this would not be easy if left unresolved. I wanted to confirm receipt of my formal invoice. I asked him to do the right thing. This is not a threat. That is what a professional looks like when they are trying to resolve something the right way. And his response? Week of silence, a closing that passed without a settlement, and a phone call where he accused me of wrongdoing and hang up. Tells you everything you need to know about how Henry Jambalaya Real Estate handles its professional obligations. The closing has come and gone, and as of today, this remains unresolved. I gave John Milton and Henry Jambalaya every opportunity to resolve this the right way. Before the closing, in writing, with documentation, with a formal invoice, with multiple follow-ups. The closing came and went on May 22nd without resolution. And when I called today to give them one final chance to respond in good faith, the broker accused me of sending threat and hanged up on me. So now the next route begins. John Norton had an obligation to present an offer to the seller exactly as it was submitted. He did it. Henry Jambalaya, as the broker, had an obligation to acknowledge that failure and make it right. He didn't. And instead of accountability, what I received was silence and then the accusation. A seller in Yonkers trusted this brokerage to represent them fully in $990,000 transaction. This is what that representation looked like. If you are selling your home in Yonkers or anywhere, ask hard questions before you sign a listing agreement. Ask your agent how they handle offers. Ask what their standard is for presenting every term of the offer to you completely. Ask them what happens when something goes wrong. Because in this case, when something went wrong and I gave them every opportunity to fix it, they choose silence, deflection, and to call it a threat. This is not the kind of representation you deserve. Thanks for watching.